Hello, everyone. Welcome to 2016. My name is Nika Smith, me and my little errant piece of hair. And welcome to the first of the 2016 BlackProGen Google Plus Hangouts. And tonight I am joined by some lovely and amazing genealogy researchers. The first being Felicia Addison. Not sure if she's tuning in audio wise or not. Next we have, looks like Angela Walton Raji is joining us as well. She's waving her little hands. Then we've got James Morgan. We've got Renata Sanders, as well as Miss Shelley Murphy. Tennessee is in the house. Virginia's in the house. Maryland's in the house. California was here, but California left. Maybe California's coming back. We want to give some love to Felicia because it's coming up on Super Bowl, and she lives in the Bay. And if you know anything about the Bay Area, people talk about the traffic in D.C. Right now, the Bay Area is just as bad as D.C., if not worse. So I'm sending some love out to all the Bay Area people because I know the Super Bowl is going to make you delirious. But
Can I apologize about something real quickly?
What are you going to apologize? What are you going to apologize for?
Because you guys may or may not know, my email was hacked like a week and a half ago, and I was sending out blast emails to all my networks telling them I was out in Greece somewhere and stuck and they needed money. So I want to apologize if anybody got that email. I actually got a response from somebody that was wondering, was I out there doing genealogy research? And I was like, no.
That's good.
I haven't found any Greek relatives yet. But
well, you know what I normally do in those situations, like when someone sends an email like, oh my gosh, I'm in a foreign country, they want my kidney, whatever. I usually I email the people back and say, oh my gosh, yes, I'm going to help you. I'm going to tell me where to send the money.
That's Tennessee.
Oh, hold on. I'm going to mute you, Felicia, because you're over there talking to Kim. She keeps hanging herself up. Anywho, so usually if somebody sends me an email where someone's email's been hacked, I will email the person back and tell them, yes, I have the money. I'm going to send it to you. Can you tell me where I need to send it? And so then when they give me all the instructions, I then forward that to the Federal Trade Commission.
That's what I do.
So I'm giving you all my little hack for that. And, and then sometimes I also like to go into Google Maps and send them on a wild goose chase.
Wow.
Thinking that they're going to go to this place or that place to find the money, and I'm never going to send it. That's horrible.
You're teaching me something. Yeah. I got an email from my grandfather. He said, well, James, if you went out there and got stuck and you weren't prepared, it's on you. You got to figure it out. You're an adult.
Good old grandpa.
I see Sally.
Both of my grandfathers are prior military, so that's what that is.
Oh, my goodness. Well, you all, we have a whole lot to talk about.
Yes.
Somebody is doing some dishes. I don't know where that is, but it must be some good food cracking off in somebody's house. Hold on, I'm getting ready to mute everybody. You guys get put on restriction every time, and I know it's not Felicia.
Nothing happening at Renata's house.
I just muted you.
It's not my house. Nothing's happening here.
Oh my gosh, so it was Felicia. We'll blame it on her.
Wait, Angela's quiet.
Well, that's because she muted her. Her house is quiet. She's been doing really good with her audio. It was Felicia that was the issue this time.
Oh.
Bye, Felicia. I had to. I'm sorry.
Oh my gosh. So if you are listening live on YouTube, feel free to tweet us, hashtag BlackProGen. We'll try to get to your questions or concerns regarding the first set of episodes for PBS's Finding Your Roots. Again, I'm Nika Smith if you're just joining us. We have some viewers out there. I'm going to wave at you guys. And
What's that?
And Miss Angela is doing her usual no reverb, cut out one of your windows. That's what's happening
I know.
with you.
I was trying to pull up Twitter on TweetDeck, and I think I opened up another window for the Hangout. Okay, I'm going to produce some windows.
All right. So let's get started. First question for the night. Let's talk about the positive stuff. What has been your favorite parts of this first set of episodes?
We're talking about finding your roots.
Absolutely. We're talking finding your roots.
Which
Well,
episode?
Any favorite parts?
I've enjoyed the guests in general. I enjoyed watching Norman Lear last night. Very articulate man. I hope I'm like that in my 90s. And it was just good to just hear him articulate his feelings just about life and the future, as he says, forever, however long that is for him. And I've enjoyed that. I especially enjoyed Donna Brazile, a woman whom I've admired for many, many years. And I guess the selection of guests has been a positive for me. Some of them were kind of interesting in terms of maybe their reaction to certain things, the nervous laughter, that sort of thing. But I've enjoyed, seeing some of the guests, and that has been a positive.
Yeah, for me, I'd like to say that I enjoyed the fact that they had the Waynes. Which one was it? Keenan on there?
Keenan.
Because the thing about the Waynes was that I like is that, or that episode I should say, is that the Waynes are one of those black families in the entertainment business that you really don't. I don't really feel like you know them as well as you might know like the Jacksons, let's say. So I've always kind of wondered what was their history, and it's a large family. They made a bajillion movies, but I don't feel like I really know any of them like I would know like Michael or Tito or Jermaine. You know what I mean? So that's just something for me that
Interesting.
I enjoyed learning a little bit more about their personal history because they've been around for so long. But it's like, who are they?
Do you feel, James, that you learned more? I mean, we learned about their past, but I don't necessarily feel that I learned a lot more about them. Well, of course, we were not there to get their biographies, but
Yeah.
do you feel that you got more?
Well, I got more than I had. I still don't feel like I know them per se, because even like I don't like when they were talking about like growing up in poverty and stuff like that. I'm not sure if Sean and Marlon had the same experience, but I don't know. But at least now I know that they grew up in poverty. I know. I didn't even know. I don't even think I knew that where they were. Like they were from New York. I didn't know any
Okay.
of their history.
Yeah.
Whereas like I said, I compare them to the Jacksons. Like
Right.
the Jacksons, I know. Not only have I like looked up some of their history, but I know that there are people out there who know that history, know their information, not only genealogy, but even like just personal. So, like I said, it was just nice to kind of get that veil of mystery lifted off the Wayne's family, at least a little bit.
Interesting.
I enjoyed the segment with Maya Rudolph's, her segment, and I didn't know that she was Minnie Riperton's daughter. It seems like I'm the only
I always
person
knew
that
that.
know that.
Okay.
Yeah, but I like her a lot, and I enjoyed her segment.
I think Donna Brazile was so far this season probably my favorite, and the reason I think it was is because she knew some history of her family. She had done some research, so it was nice to be able to go a little further
Right.
for the researchers, who did it, to be able to give her something she didn't know. And Angela, I love Miss Sally's picture behind your head.
Oh, she's my heart.
That's your great-grandmother,
My
correct?
great-grandmother. That's my Choctaw Freedman great-grandmother.
That's right. That's
Yes.
right.
Yes.
I know Miss Sally.
Yes.
Anyway, so
Thank you.
Donna Brazile was mine, but I also like the comments and the things she shared. And we were on Twitter fiercely, and
Yes.
I still hear her saying this country is still not at peace.
Right.
About slavery.
Right.
Yeah.
This country has not faced slavery. I'm saying us, 19th, 20th, 21st century people, we're learning and hearing about this, and I think there's more to come and more to do. But Donna Brazile's probably has been my overall favorite. I think it was well done. I believed everything that they said, didn't have any assumptions about, or questioned somewhat of her information. So that's it for me.
I have to say my favorite was probably hers as well. I felt the most comfortable, I guess you would say, as a researcher watching her segment. In some ways, I almost feel like they had to really give her justice because she's somebody that spends a lot of time looking at details. A lot of times when you have guests on shows like this, they may be an actress or maybe a philanthropist or whatever other role they might have, but they're not somebody that is really honing in on details. Like she spends her life looking at details, like we do. And so I
Yeah.
almost feel as though he felt like he had to do her justice because of the amount of justice that she does us reporting on politics and civic matters and things that affect African Americans and people of color disproportionately. So I definitely feel like I liked her segment probably the best. It also, I like the fact that they dealt with Louisiana. That made it even better.
Yes.
But so moving on to question number 2. Where do you feel the editing or production made research appear faulty? Now, while we were live tweeting during several episodes, I missed last night. I have 50 other hats I wear, but where do you feel as though the production and the research did not converge well together? Oftentimes when we're discussing this program in Facebook groups, online, just in person, researchers of all skill levels, will remark, oh, I wish that, that he was doing this for regular people. Or then you hear other people chime in and say, well, you can't expect them to, place every piece of research that they find on the show. They have to edit for continuity and for time and things like that. But there are some times where the production and the research are like this. They don't come together. So where do you feel you saw that so far during the season?
Well, I struggle. I try to stay quiet, and I struggle. And I'm going to let Angela breathe while I say what I got to say. I struggle when it doesn't come together. I struggle when there's too many assumptions or there's statements that lead people to believe something that might not be true. Not a good example, and Angela will probably come up with more, and Renata or James, but when they pointed out, oh, on a slave schedule there was a 4-year-old or whatever, oh, that's probably your so-and-so great-great-grandparent. Well, how do you know that? What other documentation? You're telling the world you just found the slave child, the ancestor. There's nothing that they know. Because what would have been better is to say, with this documentation or this evidence, this leads us to believe this could be your great-great-grandfather. But that's not what's coming across. So I think the flair of the entertainment world has taken over some of the actual diligence on the research. And I think we lose some of that, and it means something to us because we do the research. But the average person watching that, I got a slave schedule. Oh, yeah, my great-grandfather in this year would have been about this. Oh, there he is, or there she is. I think that's wrong, and it gives a different impression. So, Angela.
Well, I will interject something here. I have a background in communications. That's what I went to college for. So video production, radio, publications, that's my world. And oftentimes, people will refer to these shows and say, okay, for length, for clarity, for editing value, blah, 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 whatever. Something was edited out. But something that I feel needs to be said about this whole set of shenanigans, as I'll call them, regarding the slave schedule is, they wanted the impact of having a line of a document to show the descendant of the formerly enslaved. They wanted to have that so they could open the book of life and say, this is your ancestor, right? Because that's the reason why they print out the different documents. They print out the photos, all that is so that someone can point to a person and say, this is that person. In this case, if the research has been done appropriately, there should be something that says Anna, Negro girl, age 9, value $200. If you are doing the research appropriately, if you have if you're employing the genealogical proof standard, if you're following what the guidelines are, there should be some preponderance of evidence outside of a blank line that denotes a sex, an age, a race, and whether a former enslaved person is a fugitive of the state, because they never mention that.
Never.
That is a box on there. If you're looking for impact, showing the document that proved to you beyond a shadow of a doubt that this person was enslaved because their name is mentioned, or an account that someone gave in a diary or a set of papers, that has more impact than showing a blank line. In my opinion, when you choose for editing, for whatever, to show a blank line, you have devalued my ancestor again, because they've been nameless until somebody's gone out to find them. And here you have the opportunity to give them a name, and you choose to show a blank line instead.
Y'all done made Nika mad.
No, I'm not mad.
No,
I'm just
that's
I'm
not
just
being
saying.
mad. That's
That's
factual.
just I'm not trying to say that the show had it out for this person, not for that person, but
Yeah.
my whole point is, if the research is being done correctly, and in concert with all the policies that we've been using, or just all the research that's been done on African American research, there should be another document that could be showed, rather than
or something that brings conclusive
evidence
to
yes,
demonstrate there's the link, and
absolutely,
there's the link. So
yeah,
But I think that the thing that's going on here is, this is the difference to me between like finding your roots, and then even like I would even kind of put like Who Do You Think You Are kind of in that category too, because they're both dealing with celebrities.
yeah.
And then a show like Genealogy Roadshow, because to me, like Genealogy Roadshow, if they given the same circumstances, what they'll do is they'll say, this leads us to believe X, Y, and Z. They understand the presentation, but again, I mean, when you've got Miss Barry over there, organization of professional genealogists, all that kind of stuff, it creates a different audience, I think. Um, I understand. I understand what you're saying, and I think that I think that they're just playing to a different audience overall. I'm not saying it's right.
I gotta disagree with you on this, because to me if you're trying to go for the gusto, right? We want
Mhm.
tears, we
Mhm.
want emotion, we want the person to say something and kind of act out of sort of character, so to speak. Like if Donna Brazile is very astute and just always well put together, we want to see emotion from her, right?
Mhm.
Because that's what TV is. It's emotion. It's playing on emotions, right? We do this every day. We sit in front of our TV and we allow our emotions to be played with willingly, right? Following a storyline, whatever. So if they were looking for emotion, this is Nika. If you're looking for emotion and you want it to be authentic and whatever else, why show a blank line when you already have proof with a person's name? Isn't
Because
it more impactful for you to see the name than a blank line?
no, I know, listen, I got a film degree myself. I agree with you on that part. My thing is, I think that they just don't, and I don't know anybody on the production team or anything like that. I just
Yeah,
think that
I don't either. But yeah,
I just think that they are looking, they're looking for a different audience, I think, than a show like Genealogy Roadshow to me, because I think that most of the people, in their minds, I don't think that anybody is thinking that we would actually care about that as an audience, but in fact, there are some of us obviously who do. I'll tell you one thing that part didn't bother me as much. It bothered me from the assumption standpoint, but not from a production standpoint. The part that bothered me was when they showed Keenan Wayne's it was like, I think it was great 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 grandfather, the one that went to Canada and then came back willingly or whatever. They showed his picture, and I was like, wow, where'd you get this picture? And they never. That was one part that kind of lost it for me more so. I was like, did you get this from a relative? Was this in a book, a
Some
journal?
of it's
Where did that
online.
picture come from?
Yeah. Yeah.
I wanted to say that I feel like they somewhat are glamorizing the research, and I agree with what Nika is saying. I take a kind of different twist to it. By the way, this is Renata. I know you can't see me. I cannot let you all see me right now. Um, but it's like, for me, I would prefer to actually hear them say sometimes, we cannot ascertain that this is your ancestor. And to explain that for those of us that research the formerly enslaved, there's not always going to be an answer. We're not always going to magically, the way they make it look, find our ancestors in every document that we look at. And we're certainly not going to pick up one slave schedule and just immediately go, bam, that 4-year-old female is my great-great-grandmother. You know, there has to be some supporting documentation for that, just like Nika was saying. So that's my problem is, you know, we have a lot of people now taking DNA tests and putting up quick little family trees with just anybody's name on it. And I think they're being led to believe that it is just that easy, that it is just that simple. So that's my concern. And then to speak to James's point, I go crazy about the pictures because I'm always like, how do they magically find a picture of every single person's ancestor on the shows? You know, and I don't even know what my own great-grandparents look like, you know.
Exactly.
Some of
I
those
can tell
pictures are
you,
online
I was
already.
going to say, I can tell you that
Yeah.
the source for that is in the commercial at the very beginning, at
Absolutely.
the end, where the little leaf flies through the historical site. That should tell you where they come from.
Mm. But yeah, and a lot of those are already online. Several of us have just Googled even while it was on the air and said, "Oh, they grabbed it from this site, which has been up for 6 years." So, you know,
But are
some of
they
it's
the
there.
real
So.
people? Are they the
Yeah,
real people?
in some cases, yes.
Okay.
Which made that part easier. That's not always my concern in terms of accuracy. You know, I think as we focus on the use of slave schedules, I think there is something that certainly as a standard of African American genealogical research. Certainly, we all at some point are going to encounter that massive document with no names. And even if there was something just like a slave manifest that listed no passengers' names, but just said male 25, female 35, child 7 years old, there is no way that anyone would take just a passenger ship manifest with no names and then tell someone, there's your ancestor coming to America from
Mm-hmm.
England. That would never happen. That would not be responsible genealogical research. That would not be responsible information that would be shared with a client or with a guest. And I think for me, the concern is at least on 3 different occasions, I have seen a blank sheet or a sheet with just tick marks, age, gender, complexion, and to tell a person that is one's ancestor. And as I was having a conversation earlier this evening, how can, let's say, a document that is even for entertainment purposes, and those of you with a media background, if I have a slave document from 1860 where a slaveholder died and it lists all of the slaves, that to me, you can't say is less compelling than the slave schedule from the same year from the same slaveholding household with no names. Which one is going to convince me that you have located my ancestor, particularly when I know the ancestor of question and I'm looking at the estate and there is my ancestor's name. I look at a slave schedule, there's no one's name. And to what degree is that responsibility? Yes, there's a time issue. Yes, they can't reveal everything, but it would seem to me, for the sake of even pure entertainment, showing that estate record, if it was found, is far more compelling than showing something blank to say, here's your ancestor as a slave. And we know last year there was a slip up with one guest. They showed the slave schedule and there was the, oh, here's your ancestor. And they were pointing to a male and saying, this is your female ancestor with her child. And that was just, you know, an editing error. But the fact is that as researchers, and even if you didn't find it, then just say, this is all we have found. This is a slave record that we have found. And we know that this person was enslaved by person X. This is a list showing the numbers of human beings held in bondage by this person. Quite possibly your ancestor is among them. But to say line number 26, there they are, and of course this person who's not a genealogist, oh my God, really? Oh my God, how did you find this? And they get all emotional. Yeah, it makes for good emotional television. But this is also PBS. And as I heard someone say, that education and entertainment do not need to be mutually exclusive. And PBS prides itself on definitely being something that can entertain and something that does educate. And so I, have that as a tremendous concern. We have some documents that we can share later, but that's a major concern, the use of that as being definitive proof.
I say let's go ahead and get into that now. A few of us talked earlier about actually showing the difference between what a slave schedules does for your research versus what an actual document that names an ancestor does. And I'm going to have Miss Angela, since we were just talking about, you were just speaking, I'll just go ahead and share my screen.
Okay. Everyone recognizes, of course, that is a slave schedule. And at the bottom left-hand portion, you will see a person's name. You can't see it very clearly. The name is Temperance Bass, and it's a list of all the slaves that she had. Now, she was the widow of Major John Bass of Giles County, Tennessee. And these are the slaves, starting in the bottom left-hand corner. And you see their ages, 55, 52, 50, 50, 43, 38, 35, and so on. And it continues on the next column. And of course, you see a whole slew of human beings that were held in bondage by this family. She was the widow. This is the 1860 slave schedule. And in this particular year, her husband died, which is why she is listed as the owner. This image that you're looking at is the estate. Okay, this is really an inventory of the property that John Bass, who died in that year, this is a list of his property. Callie, 65 years old, Frank, 55, Patrick, 50, Esther, 50, Big Nancy, 45, Irvin, 38, and on and on. Wow. Which one do you really think is more compelling, and which one is more definitive proof that my ancestor was enslaved in that household by this particular family? And there is no way that you can say that the document with no names could outweigh the tremendous impact of the document with names. And as we talk about the need to say their names and to be able to call them, I'm looking at other names, that some names that I recognize from family oral history, other names I don't know, but they were there on the same estate. And my ancestor on 1, 2, 3, the fifth line down, there's Mitchell. There's Mitchell, 15 years old. Now, if you go back to that slave schedule and you see again the list of the slaves, now this is the very same year. The very same year, granted, we don't know when his birthday is, what month, but you see, well, okay, you don't see a 15-year-old, but you see 3 16-year-olds. Well, is that fairly accurate? And which one of the 3 would be pointed out to me if I were a guest as that line right there is my Mitchell? Really? Is that really proof? I think there's a certain degree of responsibility. Now, I think it is, to be fair, certainly we don't know what is said after the researchers turn over their information to the show and to the producers, and I'm sure there's a script. But they don't get that document, that slave schedule, without some reason of having it. And I guess to me, it would just be very important to have a very clear statement that would be almost, attached to it, glued to it, stapled to it, whatever, that one cannot zoom in and say, on line number 22, there's your guy, there's your ancestor. I know that if I certainly did that, I would have all kinds of genealogy police glaring at me. And yeah, I think it is important that we're honest in what we do and not suggesting dishonesty as an intention, but a certain degree of responsibility. And it's something that just leaves me concerned, particularly guest after guest after guest. If their ancestors were enslaved, this is what's given to them. And it's becoming a formula, and that part does concern me.
Well, but let me ask you a question, and I'm just playing the other side for a second, because I stated that, I struggle with some of that. Do you think they actually have that, and for the sake of time, that's just not brought in?
Well, I can understand the argument of time, except which one is more compelling.
No, I understand that, but I'm saying
compare the two.
because they hire these experts, and I'm going to make that assumption. They hire these experts. I don't know if we can get background information, but we go look up the same stuff and get something different. We've done it, being on chat. We're pulling it up while it's on the TV. So my question is, I have to question who's doing the research, I guess is where I'm going. And are they providing that to Dr. Gates? Because he's reading. He's reading. He's hiring people all over the country, and things like that. And they are supposedly experts in their field. But again, if you're entertaining the common person, the average person that's watching that TV show, you actually just misled them as to what it takes to do that research, and for someone to agree or to believe that's my ancestor. Well, so I want to have a little positive to think maybe they do have it, and it's not
and a matter
as bad
of time.
as we think it is.
Well,
I don't know.
We don't know. But here's the thing.
We don't know.
We don't know. And I'm trying to be fair. I'm trying to be fair. But if they weren't presenting any documents that had a whole bunch of handwritten text on them, where the actual text they wanted the person to pay attention to wasn't highlighted or raised, where someone went to the painstaking process of doing that, of taking it through Photoshop and graphically manipulating it so that the person could extract the information from that document, I would then really, really, really be on your side right now, Miss Shelley. But that's being done.
It's not a side. It's not a side. I'm just
okay. I would
because I know people are listening, and there's two sides, and someone could say, well, how do you know they don't do that, or they don't have the evidence that Angela said or I said? How do you know they don't?
We don't know that they don't have it. But I guess for me, for the sake of argument, though, with that is when the painstaking care is being taken with other documents, that don't even refer to slavery, right?
Yes.
Some of these things don't even refer to slavery. Some of these things are wills. Some of these things are deeds, and they are extracting the names. They're underlining them. They're highlighting them to make them look more prominent.
Yes.
Why is an inventory or a will listing slaves being treated differently?
Well,
why would it be suppressed and not shown, and a blank document shown? That's what you're saying.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Exactly. And I agree. I am not disagreeing, but there's always other sides to the opinion.
Of course.
Well, and plus, I think the other aspect you have to look at is everybody's situation, every family and every family line situation is different too. Now, I do agree. I do think that there are some, particularly in the entertainment business, that want to keep a certain narrative about the African experience in America going. And but again, that may be true. But again, every element, every family line isn't always the same. Like I can tell you just from my own family, there's ancestral lines that I know almost everything about this person or this line, and then there's some like my paternal line is like I need to hire somebody to help me with that, like in and of itself.
Yeah.
So I think it just depends. The thing that bothers me more so, like I understand what y'all are saying about the documentation. The thing that bothers me more so, again, is just going back to those photos and everything like that. I keep wondering, okay, who has that original photo? What's the story behind the photos? Where are they getting it from? Because to me, that like I would love. Granted, like I understand, like these are celebrities, so they have relatives that aren't as famous, whatever. But to me, it's like, are you putting them in touch with those other family members that have
Yeah.
this photo or have this information? Are they, maybe they have information or stories, whatever, but see, they don't. I've never seen them really do that on Finding Your Roots, and that's something that kind of bothers me a little bit. I think Nika and I were talking the other day about some stuff. Like I've gone back myself independently and found stories about past guests, ancestors, whatever. And I'm like, why didn't they put this in the show? Is it that they didn't know or that they didn't care? I don't, that kind of bothers me a little bit. It's like they're trying to
I
keep
think
this
I, the
narrative going.
point of entertainment has to stay at the top of the line.
I
And
understand
I
that.
don't agree with that per se, because we are now talking about slavery and we're talking about humans. We are talking about my family, your family, everybody's family, and how we connect, and the stories and trying to share the experience. But maybe and I love this show, you guys. I watch it
Me
religiously.
too. Me
I
too.
tape it. I watch each episode 2 and 3 times to see if there is a new way of looking for something, if they brought out about, oh, they found this documentation or evidence. So I don't want to lose the show, but I do want it to be right. And I want it to be right because we got to tell this story. And it's not an easy thing, like you say, looking at a piece of paper and say, oops, like the document I sent you. There's a 4-year-old on there, and his name is George. I'm looking for a George. And I'm looking for someone that would have been around 4 years old, on that time. But I have nothing else that says, that's my George.
Yeah.
You know,
Corroborating
and
evidence.
I've had that document, and this is from the early 1800s, and I've had that inventory document from an estate, from a will. Actually, it was from a will, and it listed all of the slaves, and it had their names on it and their value. But I'm still holding on to
Mm.
say I got to have something else that tells me that it even might be my George.
That's
This is
right.
the document that you sent me, right?
Yeah, it was an
Okay.
inventory from a will, and the man's name is Battle Muse. He was George Washington's accountant, and this was from out of his will. And I use it when I teach as examples of showing value and people in the names and things like that, because the human, our ancestors, are right there with those other items
Like
on
the
the
109
inventory.
hogs,
Yeah,
Right.
and
or the
so
old wagon, or an
yeah.
old Negro named Harry.
But look
Hmm.
at what the girl named Sal or Sable. I can't see it. Sophie.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
my point is to share in a teaching mode. Look where they have the humans,
Hmm.
and they're on this inventory, and there's money attached to them. Or what can you do with what you see on here? Where can the so what comes up? Okay, I got a name, Sal, John, Negro George. I got a name. So what's the next step? Or Jack, and then that was the purpose I used that, but it was on point, I thought, to show. this is another place you have to seek evidence. So if you have the 4-year-old, instead of the blank sheet of paper, show a piece of documentation that's got a name or some connection, and I guess I would feel better, because again, it's more emotional connection for me, because you're talking about my people or somebody's people. You know, I teared up on Donna Brazil's thing, you know, and others too. And I think that emotional aspect is hard for me sometimes when they're guessing or they're entertaining, you know, and not educating. So, because a lot of people don't understand what happened and what that means, that that boy, that Negro boy, or that Negro girl, $300. What does that mean? They don't get that. You got to sit down and explain it to them.
Well, I think I'll chime in. I pulled up some documents as well, and this kind of ties back into the blog post that I wrote about there being no wizardry or voodoo involved in trying to trace slave ownership. The example I'm going to use is one, if you, a lot of people are not aware of the slavery that took place in the Cherokee Nation, or amongst the 5 civilized tribes. We talked about Angela's great-grandmother, who was a Choctaw freedman. And in this document, this isn't 1860 slave schedules. If you notice, the words county of are scratched out, and Cherokee Nation is listed. And you would think that this Saline district of the Cherokee Nation would be listed possibly in other places, or maybe even a faux listing for Oklahoma. It's actually included in Arkansas. So if I was using the theory of look for the nearest white person to your ancestor, I would be looking in a part of the country that I really shouldn't be in, if I was using this based on the slave schedules. So if we scroll down on this page, we'll see Sarah Martin, Ellis McDaniel, Susan McNair. Notice the people are marked IND for Indian at the end of them. Go all the way down this page, and here is a 10-year-old mulatto male who is marked with a hash for being a fugitive of the state. Now, some people will say, well, how did a 10-year-old boy run away? It's very possible. His owner is listed as Eliza May with an IND at the very end. So if we flip to the next document, this is a Dawes card for a Cherokee freedman who happens to be my great-grandfather. He was not born until 1880. This document was created around 1901. So you're thinking, okay, we're doing slave era research. Why are we looking at a document from 1801? Well, if anyone's done any research in the Dawes Commission, either the application packets or the Dawes application cards, you know that if someone was born a slave, their slaveholder was listed on the front of the card, and if not, the slaveholder would be listed on the back of the card with the parent. And this is only for people who were identified as freedmen or having a degree of African ancestry. So if you flip to the next document, next part of the document, you see Isaac Rogers listed as dead, and this is for Kawascui District. Father's owner, Elzira May. The 10-year-old boy was Isaac. This document I found amongst stuff for the Oklahoma Territory. But if I had been looking for the nearest white person, or if I had been looking at the slave schedules for Arkansas and started bouncing around, I would not, I never would have found it, ever.
Help me understand. Go back to your document. It says father.
Yes.
Father.
Name
and
of
then
father.
Father's, you had 2 spots on father. Explain that.
Okay,
and
hold on.
I think there's people to understand. If we're looking, see where it says name of father.
Name of father. So that's Isaac Rogers, first row, right? Dead.
Okay.
This is a district, meaning if he had a tribal enrollment, right, it would be listed here. The father's owner is here. Then the name of the person's mother is there.
Now, does the father's owner pertain to the father?
Yes.
And I'm saying because you were talking about the 10-year-old.
This because Isaac is the 10-year-old.
Okay.
Isaac is the 10-year-old on the slave schedules because his son wasn't born. He's not
Okay.
old enough to have been a slave. If he was, going back to this first sheet, his slaveholder would have been listed here in this blank spot.
Okay.
So since he's on line 1, this information pertains to the person on line 1. So if he was enslaved, it would be listed, his owner would be listed here in this spot, but it's blank. So you flip over to the next page, and it lists the name of the parents, father going first, the year of his potential enrollment, and then you've got the name of the father's owner, and then the next set of information is for the mother, and it's in the same sequence.
Y'all showing all these documents tonight. You almost made me want to pull a mine.
So I say all that to say you're not going to find everything in an estate inventory. You're not going to find everything in a slave schedules. You're not going to find everything in a will or appraisement, any of that kind of stuff. You got to look in a bunch of different places.
I have a question in terms of what people think about process. Now, granted, this is not a how do you do your genealogy. This is, yes, genealogy for entertainment. We're here to present this person's history and then watch them cry. And it's something, though, that we still hear process. The show is not geared towards sharing the process, but we hear a statement such as, most African Americans cannot do slave research or cannot name any enslaved ancestors. To find the slaveholder of this particular family, we look for a white family living nearby with the same surname. To find this person during the slavery era, we looked at their age in 1870 and then subtracted 10 years, went to a slave schedule, a document with no names, and found someone that same age and found them. So we have 3 different processes, even though the show is not about process, but we hear some processes that certainly make some of us raise our eyebrows. And the same surname issue has certainly come up many times. Oh yes, and we hear it every episode, and maybe it's because the guests that they have found were easier to research because they had the same surname. But many of us are fully aware that a majority of people enslaved did not keep the surname of their enslaver. Some did, yes, but many did not. In fact, most did not. But we hear that as a process. To find it, we looked for a white person with the same name. Then also in 1870, we subtracted 10. What do you all think about what you hear on the program regarding process? Even though we know it's not a show about the process, we hear these things being said to the public, and I watch it on Twitter. People are taking notes and thinking they're learning how to do it, and we're hearing things that many of us are saying, oh my God. I'm curious what some of you say.
Well, I think that there's a... Go ahead, James.
You sure?
Yes.
Hello? Oh, okay. No, what I was going to say was that I think, again, everything has to be situational. I know for me, there are some lines of my ancestry where, particularly on my mother's side, my mother's surnames are very unique, particularly to the area where her family's from, which is down in the southern part of Alabama. So when I'm looking up Weems, when I was researching my Weems line and my McBride line, I mean, those family names are so unique that it was a safe assumption to say, okay, if I can find the white family and then, oh, there's only one white family, oh, I found them in the probate record. But then if I look at like my dad's side, where you have like names like Bailey, Johnson, Morgan, I mean, there's no way in the world you can do that. I don't think that there's a cure-all or you can't, like as somebody said, you can't do voodoo on genealogy research. I think you have to try. Sometimes you do have to throw things against the wall to see what sticks. But at the end of the day, you have to still do your due diligence at the end of the day. Like for me, I know that, for example, matter of fact, I pulled this document up because I was messing around looking at y'all's documents. I know that I, for a while, was researching my ancestor, Jason Weems, and the only black Weems that I could find in the written record was a man named Zeke Weems, who was a blacksmith in Abbeville, Alabama. Zeke was the slave of a man named Moses Weems, right? So for a few months, I was trying to figure out, was there a connection between these two men, because their ages, there was such a big difference in their age. Luckily for me, I found Moses Weems' probate records, and in there, not only was I able to document that my ancestor Jason was in fact living, or he was born rather, I should say, on the same plantation, and it was a very small group. They only had Moses Weems died owning 19 enslaved persons. Um, when I read through the probate record, I was able to figure out that Jason was the son of Cheney, and that, now, like I said, there was 19 total slaves on this plantation. I was able to document in the probate record that 12 of them were my flesh and blood, right? Later on, I would figure out, okay, because there were three Ezekiels. I was able to figure out one was Jason's brother, the other was his father, and guess what? Zeke, the one who I originally found out about, was actually their grandfather. I was able to document all of that, but again, it took time. So I would just say, like I said, it is a process. That's a key word. But sometimes you have to do your due diligence, and consistency will always render success, I think. But you have to be consistent
Oh, I
and
think,
diligent
yeah.
in doing the process.
I would agree. I think I was just curious in terms of what you all felt in terms of hearing a generality, sort of well, this is how you do it, even though, no, I know it's not a process of how one does it, but it seems to have been in every single case um, the process that was, in fact, explained. We went looking for a slave owner by that name, and look what we found. Next case, we went looking for a slaveholder by that name. I think Donna Brazil. Well, we went looking for Brazil, but we found a Braswell, and this is what we found. And which, according to what they were able to locate, I guess one name evolved into the other. But you hear that process being described almost as if that's how it is done across the board. And that's why I was asking, do you all feel that you're hearing a process? I felt that I was hearing a process being described. And as a teacher, I'm always thinking of the student. I'm always thinking of the learner. I'm thinking of the beginner. And for that beginner, wow, I'm thinking, oh
That's the
dear.
struggle right there.
Oh, that, yes.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
like I said, I don't think that there's a cure-all, and I don't like that they present it that way. I'm very into, yeah, you have to study American slavery, but I really believe you have to study it almost by region and by state, because it's very unique. When you study ancestry in Louisiana, let's say, which I've had to become familiar with because the woman I'm marrying is family is from there, it's a totally different world than other states that I'm used to researching. So I'm very into that. That's just me. I'm very into what was it like on the ground, where in that location.
Mm-hmm.
Not just because everybody was a slave. It's not one standard system. Slavery in the
Right.
North is different than the South. It's
That's
different in
important.
Spanish-speaking, French-speaking places
In Indian
versus English-speaking.
territory. Yes.
Indian territory, exactly. It's different everywhere. So I don't like that they present it in that way. But I think that you have to. They're showing one very limited slice of the pie. I'm gonna be quiet and let somebody else talk now.
Yeah,
Renata.
well, I've forgotten half of what I was going to say, and I'll do better next time and have a paper and pencil. But I did want to say, it's kind of like what I was saying earlier about the way that this is being presented makes people think that it's so much simpler and faster than it is. But I was kind of likening it to, if you have kids that want to grow up and play football, maybe they're playing, little league baseball or whatever, they're gymnasts or whatever, they're going to watch the NFL, they're going to watch Major League Baseball. They're going to watch the Olympics. They're going to watch these things on TV and
For inspiration.
look at these people as the pros, then this, I want to be able to do it the way they do it because they are the most successful. And I think that's how I wanted to think about these shows when they started coming on. You know, kind of, I think it was Shelley that was saying that you watch them a few times thinking that you may learn something new, and I wanted to think that's how it was going to be, is, you know, this is something I do, but maybe I can learn something more from these people that are getting worldwide exposure for their research. And it's disappointing because I'm by no means, you know, the professional that many of you are, but you know, we've been learning from each other now for years and years and years in our online community and through the conferences and workshops and things. And I feel like I know what good research looks like. There's a lot that I have from back in the day that I haven't done the do-over for, and so I don't even present that, you know, because I know better. But they're not giving us a good look at what slave ancestral research, not even always slavery related, but for the most part slavery related ancestral research, they're not giving us a good look at it. And I have to say, I think it's crucially important that they sometimes truthfully say, we just couldn't find that, or we cannot ascertain this. I have a slave schedule that's part of my presentation that I do on researching formerly enslaved ancestors, and it's a slave schedule that has who I believe to probably, possibly, most likely be my great-grandfather. But as we all know, all it says is male, age, whatever, black. And so when I present it to show my audience this is one piece that you can look at. But I've had this piece for probably, I don't know, 12, 13, 14 years now, and I have an arrow pointing to it, and it says possibly Calvin, but there's no real way for me to know because there's no inventory that matches that year or anything that lets me know for absolutely sure that that's him. So now I'm getting long-winded, but I'm getting, you know, I just wish they would just say that, because people need to understand we are not going to always find every answer about our ancestors. We're not going to always find a picture. We're not even going to usually find a picture, and we're definitely not going to find the answers.
I think their way of kind of saying what you're saying, Renata, is sometimes they'll have you know, when they do like the virtual tree for a guest, they'll say, "Oh, we didn't find much there." That's your ellipsis, you know, like, "Oh, we," you know what I mean, like, "We didn't find much."
Right.
That's pretty much all you're going to get for that, because they don't want to spend that much time on it, you know, and they don't want to film Henry Louis Gates sitting there with the person going, "We just couldn't find them." You know, that doesn't make for compelling television. So
it doesn't.
They do say that sometimes, and then they'll go to another family line or something.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying. But they'll never show Henry Louis Gates.
And they do say it's difficult sometimes, but look what we found.
But making it clear.
Yeah, so, I just want people to be able to realize, and we can call it a process, we can call it basics of getting, you know, doing research. Just want the average person that might have that yearning to do this type of research, or they're the family historian, to have some of the basic things, because other than that, they're collecting paper, and they're making assumptions, and they really don't know what they have. And I'm with you, Renata. That inventory, I've probably had that 10, 12 years. I've got the man's whole will, you know, and the names are there and everything, and it's still not telling me that. And maybe it's from my DAR research, because I'm tracking a bloodline. And if you don't have something, then you have to build that evidence and demonstrate without a doubt that is that person, or that's that relationship. And I might even be harder than the average person, because I know people's applications can't go through the DAR unless you can prove that relationship from generation to generation. And it might take 10 things to build a case, you know.
Well,
But somebody can't have any doubt that they're
true.
not related. So
Well, moving us forward, we're nearing our hour time here. I have one last question I'm going to ask everyone, and something else I think we kind of forgot to talk about in the space of the time that we've had tonight was the whole uh, African descended grandmother story that got passed down. From I think it's Ty Burrell from Modern Family, who had the story where the great grandmother or someone like that
I know what you're
was
talking about. And that
was
was
of
already
African
on.
descent, which
That
that
was
was already online
in
already.
2013 or 2014 or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah, that was already online, but nonetheless. My last question to everyone is: what are some of the takeaways or things that you've learned thus far in this season of the series?
I think for me, it's been very good for me to pay a lot more attention to not just my presentation of data, but making sure that I'm really clear with my data.
Yes.
And it's made me sharpen myself, sharpen my skills, I'll put it that way. Because it's one thing to say, oh my God, I don't believe that that's what they've presented, and that's a conclusion. And maybe they did share more of it, we just didn't see it, and that's a great possibility. But it's made me think also in terms of being the recipient of this new information. What are they going to be able to walk away with when I give them this? Have I been clear? And I want these 4 points to be grabbed. Have I made these 4 points clear? It's made me sharpen myself. So it's made me more self-reflective.
I think I'd have to agree with you there. And I'm more conscious
Yes.
of, am I sharing that information
Right.
correctly? And we both teach, and I need to make sure there is step 1, step 2, step 3 when I'm teaching, so people do get the ground rules, get the basics, and something they can follow, or that they can question and know what to do when they question it. And
Correct.
so I think the questioning that we have with it, and it's not really passing judgment, it's questioning what they did and how they did it, because not everybody does African American research. Some don't think they have African American running in their DNA. And Nika, I think you made the statement on the video with Krista Cowan that more African Americans are finding more European DNA than they are African, and that's a shock to us. But you have to go through that process or through those steps also when you're trying to document using the DNA. We've got more tools now than ever before, and there's more coming each day. So I think those plain old basics that I think kind of get skipped over sometimes in that show makes me question to make sure I'm communicating that. So I have to agree with Angela. That's more of the emphasis. It's making me analyze more of how I am teaching people how to do this type of research, come up with conclusions or question. So it keeps us on our toes. So I commend them on that. I love this show. I support it. You know, I might do it a little differently, but you know, it's good. James?
Yeah, I would say, to trying to shift gears, I know we oftentimes, I think, like, African American genealogists, we have a certain camaraderie and a certain focus, obviously, because of our unique situation in the genealogy world. I think I also think as a group, we kind of have like an ownership almost of the topic because of like roots and all those kind of things. But I would say this season so far made me kind of appreciate the European immigrant story a little bit more, like watching Jimmy Kimmel's, because like I like Jimmy Kimmel from way back when he was doing like, the Man Show, like a whole bunch of other stuff that people don't even, I was not old enough to watch some of the things I used to watch, put it like that. but I would say I appreciated that part more, I think, and it wasn't even because of a racial aspect as much as it was like I'm from New Jersey originally, even though I live in the DC area. I grew up outside Manhattan, so I could relate to like the street corners that they were showing flashes of and things. I'm like, I know what that looked like in the 90s, in the 2000s, and I like appreciate that. I know that my ancestors, some of them were living in that same environment at that time. So competing for jobs and things. So I would say I appreciated that part of it. I would also like to say that Finding Jane is the greatest drinking game ever. Don't know.
You're a wicked man.
I am a wicked man. If you don't know what the Finding Jane drinking game is, then you just don't know. You have to step your game up and find out.
It's for a secret society of people.
There you go.
There you go.
I would say for me, I agree on the. I agree
You just
on
broke
the.
us all up, Jane. Shame on you.
I
Smug. Look at him.
he is. He's got the New York or New Jersey swag down.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
why he's like totally unaffected by the face.
Shade on 100.
Shade on like 300. I would say that for me.
Let me call you right back.
Okay. I was gonna say so Miss Angela wraps up her call. We're
watching you out in Arizona. Somebody just called me.
Somebody called you about what I said?
You're famous.
You're famous. I would say my takeaways or things that I've learned. I would definitely say it definitely my hoe got sharpened.
Yeah.
I'm a new farmer. Quotes, new gardener. I do a garden every year with my father-in-law.
Okay.
I know nothing about sharpening your hoe, making sure your hoe stays sharpened.
But now you know.
Now I know about it. And I would say that I have sharpened all of my tools as a result of watching how the information was presented.
That's cool.
Just exactly how you all have mentioned. I also feel, in some ways that in terms of me being an instructor, a number of us teaching nationally, in terms of doing family history and genealogy research, that we owe it as well to take the stories further. Give them a little bit more shelf life. Even after PBS removes the episodes from online. If we're blogging, if we're tweeting, if we're doing podcasts, if we're having shows, we're discussing some of the topics that they couldn't discuss at length. We're giving them a longer shelf life. And so for me, and I think this season I felt like the research was presented in a different way. In some ways I liked that, but there was still, to quote a fellow researcher, there was still the whole, is Ancestry going to put a shaky leaf on every blank line of the slave schedules going on?
Good question.
So I have that concern.
Wow.
Because we don't want people to jump to conclusions, but
Correct.
but that's our job, is people that are out in the minefields, or that are out there, in the trenches teaching and getting more people on board. That's our job, is to really give perspective to things. So anything else anyone else want to add before I start going into the details about our next session that we're going to have?
No. I'll just say that the caterpillar is moving my snow outside, and I am so happy. I heard the noise, that's why I had to get up, and it's a caterpillar literally scooping up everything.
That's how you know you live in the rich part of Maryland, when they have the caterpillar outside moving your snow. As for me, I had speaking of tools, I just had me and my shovel.
Aww. Well, Baltimore County, they had to do something to help us out. We've been stranded.
That's where all the real money is at. In Baltimore County. Don't believe the hype. It's not in PG. It's not in Prince George. Don't believe the hype.
Oh my goodness! I know. I feel bad for you guys. Our snow was melted by Sunday. It was done. It's
Oh
over.
wow.
My
Oh,
street just got plowed yesterday. My driveway, I had it done on Monday, so I could get out. But then the street, I could get down to the end of the driveway. Then I couldn't go nowhere, because the
Yeah.
plowhead came through and blocked me right back in. So, but it's
Wow.
melted. Well, it's actually going to freeze tonight and then get up to the
Ah.
40s tomorrow where I'm at.
praise,
So,
Okay.
praise whatever gods may be that I telework tomorrow.
Telework. Okay. Good for you.
I leave work early on Friday, and I didn't have to work
Ah.
the beginning of the week. So I am coming up this week. We're coming
Oh
up
my
and
goodness.
getting
Very
over.
good.
So we'll recap. We've got the schedule for this year's set of hangouts on whoisnikasmith.com. Our next session is going to be taking place on Wednesday, February 24th. It'll be the second part of our recap or react to the third season of Finding Your Roots. And then following that, on March the 8th, which is just a week or so later, we'll be talking about Louisiana and Mississippi genealogy research. Yeah. That's one of my areas, me and Felicia. Anything, everything about those particular states, how to research there, where to begin, how the court and clerk system is set up, resources that we found, all that kind of stuff. We'll be covering a number of states this year. So if you're waiting to see when your research location is going to be featured, be sure to check out the schedule.
Alabama,
For
Alabama, Alabama.
You're not until like the end of the year. Sorry. Um,
Aw.
So anyway, I am Nika Smith. I'm so glad you all joined us tonight. And like I said, if you
Was
have any,
Felicia with us? Was she muted the whole
she
time?
was muted
yeah.
the whole time. Do you want to say anything, or is Kim still banging pans around?
Hi,
No,
Felicia.
they've stopped.
Hey,
Hey,
Felicia.
Angela.
I've never had a chance to say hi in real time.
Oh my goodness!
Everybody
Buddy.
was everybody was just bye to Felicia. Everybody should say hi, Felicia, because
I
it's gotta
know
be hard. It's gotta be hard having that name these days.
it
It was
probably
mine
is.
first, though.
That's right. That's right.
Oh my gosh. So on behalf of everyone here, thanks so much for participating, giving us an hour and 13 minutes of your time. Like I said, again, join us for the second React session to Finding Your Roots on Wednesday, February 24th, 8 p.m. Central Standard Time, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. And then we'll be back again on March the 8th for Louisiana and Mississippi genealogy research. And that's a Tuesday instead of a Wednesday at 8 o'clock Central Time, 9 p.m. Eastern, and 6 p.m. Pacific. Everyone wave, say goodbye. Until next
Hi.
time.
Thank you, Nika, for
Thank you.
hosting.